So, good afternoon. This is Karie Lee here from the Sacred Cedars Wilderness School, and I'm here to give you some backstory on episode 10. Dun dun dun, we're getting close down there. And as you see, it's a beautiful hot summer day, and it's kind of windy today. And that just leads us right into this next episode where winter is coming in, and it does get very, very windy. So, I really like the first shot where they're zooming into my site, and it's from a different angle. Instead of coming from the downstream side from the east, they're coming from the upstream side from the west, and all the snow is blanketed all over, and it's beautiful, and I love it because you can actually see my shelter. And right here, if you look very carefully, there's a little black spot, and that's my shelter. And of course it's buried in the snow. It became an igloo eventually, but in this shot here, I just really like, wow, there's my shelter. And you can see that I'm about 2/3 of the way up the hill from the river. And then where it levels out and up above is all the bogs. And the other part that you can see is the ridge. One ridge runs down the hill on this side, and another ridge runs down the hill on the other side, kind of creating these arms. And in between those two ridges is what I call Blueberry Hill. Blueberry Hill is where I got grouse, and it's also where I built my shelter, and it had loads and loads of berries. Before it snowed, it did. Loads of blueberries. And so it's here on Blueberry Hill that you see me doing my snow angels. And I don't know, it's just like, you have to do snow angels. I mean, come on. I love doing snow angels. And even this last Christmas, on a different post on my Instagram account, you can see a video of me and my sister-in-law making snow angels in a park in Seattle, and then her dog comes and attacks us, and it's pretty funny. But I just couldn't resist. It's just, when snow comes out, I'm just like a little kid, like, oh, we get to go play in the snow. So that was fun. And the way I get to play in the snow is here. I live in Idaho. We have Schweitzer Mountain Ski Resort. I am a snowboarder. I like to do cross-country skiing and snowshoeing around the mountains and the woods. And I don't know, when winter comes, it's like a winter playground around here. I'm always out doing some kind of snow something or other. It doesn't matter, skiing, snowboarding, whatever. And dog sledding. Yes, believe it or not, dog sledding. And so when winter comes, for me, I'm just kind of used to living in the snow and having to trudge through snow. To me, I feel very at home, because we have probably 4 months. Our winters are 6 months long, and 4 months of it is snow. So I'm feeling very cozy about that. I'm not worried about the snow one bit. So I want to talk about the Cob Oven and the squirrel and the whole winter storm. And I have to tell it in the order that it really happened. The editing really kind of switches it all around, and I just have a hard time following it. So I just have to tell it from my perspective of the way it really went down. My bad on the Cob Oven is that I waited too late. I should have done the Cob Oven 2, 3, even 4 weeks earlier, when we had this really nice, hot, dry weather. It was unseasonably hot, which was kind of scary, to be honest. Like, I knew that this hot weather was not normal, but that's when I should have been working on the oven. But at the same time, the weather's so nice, it's like, oh, I should be hunting and getting food, because I do know winter's coming. In fact, I predicted this 3-day snowstorm a month ahead of time, because I've been watching the weather and the weather patterns as it works with the moon. And if you're in tune with the moon, then you would know that during a new moon, weather's going to be unstable. You're going to get your lows, you're going to get your rain and your wind. And on a full moon, you're going to get your intense weather. And I had watched the full moon the month before. We had a 3-day windstorm. And you saw that happening. And it was intense, and it was bitter cold because it was coming from the other direction. So that clued me into, like, okay, this next full moon, 3 days before, I think that's when we're going to get our first really big snowstorm. And that's exactly what happened. So I knew that I had to make some decisions on my Cob Oven before that storm came in, because that was holding me up of finishing my front wall. And I still had clay that I could dig out inside my shelter, because one side of the shelter I had my bed and everything all good. I had a little table in there, and I had originally wanted to put my cob oven in the back of the shelter, but over time I could see that that really wasn't going to work. The ground's frozen and my initial idea just really wasn't going to work. So I decided to put it up on the front wall, and I had plenty of clay where I could dig down and get that extra clay. So on day 59, believe it or not, I had already prepared to do my cob oven. I had the chimney. I did that a couple of days ahead of time. But I had to be on it. So early in the morning, I had to get this fire going because it needs to cook slow. Cob needs to bake. So I had everything set in place. But what had happened, this is the weird part, not what I expected. When I dug out that clay, my shelter was nice and dry and cozy and warm, and the walls are thick and everything's all sealed up tight, except for that one half a wall. But when I dug out the clay, I didn't expect this. It released this cold moisture. And now I'm like living in a refrigerator. Not ideal at all. So I actually had a hard time even starting my fire this morning. It took me an hour, and I was going through my tinder and kept trying, and I had to pull all the stops. I had to make feather sticks, and I went to collect pitch to start my fire, and lo and behold, as I'm gathering the pitch, I shot a squirrel. And no, that is not the first squirrel I caught. They caught me saying, like, this is my first squirrel, and I'm looking up because I'm thinking about how long ago it'd been since I actually shot a squirrel. Not trapped, but shot. So I'm trying to think, like, how long ago was that? And that's when they said, they stopped it at that. So it made it look like that was my first squirrel. But if you watch the last backstory, you can see proof that that was not the first squirrel I shot, because I had one squirrel for my mom for her birthday and another squirrel in the other hand off the screen. And you can just see part of it. So whatever, it's just editing. I'm not upset about that. So as I was saying, I had predicted this storm to come at this certain time, and I knew I was getting down there, and I knew I needed to get this wall finished, but I had to make decisions on the cob oven, blah, blah, blah. Everything was building up. And 2 weeks prior to the full moon, it was the new moon. And at that time, I had said to myself, like, I want to have that experience of being in your shelter. You're cozy, you're warm, you're comfortable, and there may be a blizzard outside and you don't care because you're so comfortable inside your shelter. And if I had a plate of food, bonus! And that's exactly what happened. I knew it might be miserable and it might be lovely, but I just wanted to have that experience, to be in that shelter and thriving and eating food. And it's snowing outside and you don't give a darn. So when that storm came and I got that squirrel, I did not eat that squirrel that night. I stayed up late. I worked on the cob oven and I worked on that wall. I needed to get it in place. I stayed up pretty late at night working on that. And I saved that squirrel for the next night because I knew that storm was going to come and I wanted to eat it in my shelter, cozy warm. So I was super stoked about that. I couldn't believe it. Like, oh my God, my dream is happening. So the issue with the cob oven is that cob needs to bake. And the chimney worked out great. I lit the fire, the coals went in there, and then it just smoldered and it baked the clay beautifully. Perfect. On the inside, so I had 2 fires going in. Yes, it was intense. I was like, okay, here's the fires. Okay, it's going here. Go inside, look at the fire in here. Kept having to go back and forth all day long. And I kept trying to slow the fire down on the inside. And I just really did not have anything that I could dampen the fire down, to slow it down. It was burning way too fast. So the outside of the cob oven actually hardened and formed a crust. But instead of having like 3-inch oven, it was kind of 2 on the top, and the clay inside was just wet and it was just falling off. But it was an experiment and I just had to make that decision. If it was gonna work, great, I'd finish the wall. I'd have to dig up more clay to finish the wall. If it didn't work, fine, I used that clay to make the wall, but I just had to make those decisions that day. So I took all that clay, now it's dry, so I have to add water to it and finish that wall. I got it done before the snowstorm. So hooray! And I did kind of keep the chimney through there for a while. There was a hole that I could dig out. So I could always come back and try it again, I suppose. So the first day the storm comes and it snows like 6 inches. And I had to push my door open to get it open. And now you see me out there collecting firewood. And I know you're all thinking like, why is Karie waiting until the storm comes to collect firewood? Well, I wasn't exactly waiting. I did have wood, but my firewood is getting buried. And I burned up half of my firewood to do that cob oven. It was a huge resource burner. No pun intended, but it took a lot of firewood. So I went out that first day of the storm and got more firewood because I knew it was going to keep snowing, and now that firewood is going to disappear underneath the snow. So that's why I was out there collecting firewood, and it really wasn't that bad. It's snowing, but it's just snowing, and it's a little windy, but not too bad. It actually really wasn't that bad. Just snowing a lot. So now I've got all this firewood, and now I have to, and remember there's moisture inside my shelter. I cannot keep my firewood dry, so I'm having to dry my firewood out by the fire and set it aside, and I'm drying it as fast as I'm burning it. So this was a constant circle. It was a constant battle, and it just, like I said, it wasn't ideal, but I didn't know all that moisture was going to be released by the clay. But yeah, that lasted for a while. And next you see me, I'm trying to break a piece of firewood, and I'm leaning on it, and you gotta remember I live on a hill. It's probably like this. It's a pretty good hill. And it's getting slippery out, and it was a hard stick. I'm also getting weaker. So in a way, you gotta remember I'm a snowboarder, and when there's good powder, you will intentionally launch yourself off of corners knowing that you're gonna have a soft landing, right? So I'm at this stick and knowing that I gotta use my body weight to break the stick and not so much muscle weight, because I just do not have as much muscle. So when I was breaking the stick, I was leaning back. You'll see me leaning back. And I'm going, break, 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 please. And knowing, yes, I'm gonna fall backwards, but who cares? I got a soft landing behind me. So I'm like, oh, because it did startle me. Then I had to like roll back up the hill and stand back up. And it was an exhausting day, and I was done. I was really pushing myself to get this firewood in before dark. And I did not want to wake up in the morning for another 6 inches of snow to be on top of my firewood that I just collected. So I was really just trying to process that wood and get it inside my shelter so that it can dry out by the fire instead of being buried in the snow. So that's what that whole fall was about. And to tell you the truth, it was kind of fun. And so now with all that snow on it, you didn't get to see this, but I have all the topsoil on my shelter now on both sides. It looks great. I've got everything sealed in and nice. Now it's snowing. I had an amazing igloo, and it was so sweet. So now you see me eating the squirrel, and I'm saying how delicious it was, and I'm at peace and just very relaxed, because I said I was living my dream, because this was my intention, to be in my shelter, cozy, warm. I've got a fire, I have food, and it's blistery stormy outside, and I don't care. And it lasted for 3 days, and I slept a lot. I hunkered down. All three of us hunkered down, as you can see. We didn't do a lot. You went outside to get your water, to go pee, come back inside, either sit by the fire or climb in your sleeping bag. Save calories. So that covers the last episode, and dun dun dun, here comes the finale. 3 remaining, 1 episode to go. One person's gonna win $500,000. Who's it gonna be? Stay tuned for episode 11, the season finale. Woo woo! Catch you then.